Welcome to Stories of Hope, real honest stories of transformation, brought to you by Junction 42. On today's episode,
we live our lives, we grow up, we do what we do, whether good or bad. We try and find our way in the world. We become successful. We become like we're longing for someone to come up to us and say, I know who you are.
Every little thing, everything will be alright.
Well, hello and welcome to Stories of Hope, episode 8. But I have to break some news to you. This is where our journey ends, or at least for now anyway, because this is the last episode of the series. Today, I'm back in Junction 42's hometown, well, home city, in Newcastle upon Tyne. And I'm doing something a little bit different today. Instead of hearing the story of someone who has found freedom in their darkest time, I'm going to be talking to a man who goes into the prisons and actually shares the hope that can be found in Jesus Christ. He's a poet, a songwriter, and an all-round inspirational guy. Welcome to the show, Joshua Luke Smith.
Yes.
Yo. I always feel like I have to do that around rappers. Yo. Welcome.
Hello, bro.
Obviously, people will be trying to work out from the two words that you've just said whereabouts you are from. You are well-travelled, aren't you, really?
Yeah, like, I never know how I answer where I'm from, and whenever I meet someone, they're trying to work out the accent, and I don't know what it is. I was born in South London, Croydon. Then I moved to Pakistan when I was 2, where my parents raised us. So my parents were missionaries, and they set out just to help people, the poorest of the poor. So I grew up seeing things, man, in those early years that were just a little bit mad, things that you wouldn't normally see in a childhood, you know, working in communities where, I mean, they had nothing. Like, there'll be guys out on the street without legs. And I remember telling my dad one day and being like, how did that happen? And, you know, he would tell me they would take their legs off just because they would earn more money begging, you know, like that level of poverty. So stayed there and came back to the UK when I was about 10, moved around the UK. So look, I don't know where I'm from, bro. I don't know.
You are a missionary kid.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been really hard for you because a lot of missionary kids, a lot of pastors' kids, their faith is lived out for them through their parents.
Mm-mm.
How did you find Joshua's faith and not Joshua's mum and dad's faith?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, one thing I would say that was such a benefit of my environment was seeing a faith that was lived out incredibly practically. A lot of people have an experience of their parents' faith, which is effectively go to church on a Sunday, you know. For me, it was watching my parents, you know, make space in our house for people that didn't have homes and, you know, love people in a very practical, incredibly tangible way. And that would always be connected to their love for Jesus. So for me, the faith was like, oh, okay, faith looks like something. But like, as you say, you can't live on that, you know, you can't live like on someone else's faith. And when we came back to England and we moved to Yorkshire, and like I said, I didn't know who I was, man. We moved around.
That's a massive jump, like India to Yorkshire.
We moved into a Pakistani community, right? So I was in a town where there was, you either lived on the white estate, and if you lived on the white estate, you would be pretty racist, or you lived in the Pakistani estate. I was a white kid living in the Pakistani estate. So I was like, I don't know where I fit in all of this. So I started in my teens. I would just do whatever I needed to do to fit in. So whether I was with like whatever group of friends I was with, I would be doing the thing that they were doing that would make me feel like I wasn't, you know, stuck out. Like, and so that involved everything that, you know, teenagers do, man. And so that was drugs and, you know, making decisions that were destructive just to feel like I belonged. And there was one, I was probably like 17, man. I woke up one morning, I look in the mirror, I got a black eye, the left side of my face is cut, my head is banging.
Are you in a fight?
I don't know. I can't remember anything. Like, I'm looking at it, I can't remember anything. You know, that day, my mom gives me this leaflet. And like everything you said, like I grew up in the faith. I grew up in it. But my mom gives me this leaflet. She gives me this leaflet and it just said on it, do you know God as Father? And she left it on my bed. Bro, and that question just hit me. And I was like, no, I don't know. I've been around the faith my whole life, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
And so from that day, I went on a journey, which was, who is God? Who am I? And I've come to the understanding that who you are is defined by whose you are. Like, you can't define yourself outside of the definition given to you by the one that created you. So my faith journey really began then at 18. And now, like, if you ask me, are you a Christian? My response is like, absolutely, in the sense that I'm following Jesus, but I'm struggling to keep up most of the time. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm on a real journey of what that means. Like, it's not a done deal.
I had kind of like a really big revelation a couple of weeks ago. And I know the guy who originally said it will be listening to this now because he works for Junction 42. He said, are you a Christian or are you a believer? When we give our lives to Christ, we become a Christian. That's what we say we are. We're a Christian. We're a born-again Christian. When I first became a Christian, I thought, I'm such a bad Christian. I am failing daily in my Christian walk. How can I be a Christian? Yes, you're a Christian, but you are a believer. You are a believer. Nobody can take that away. You either believe or you don't. And if you believe,
right,
you will be saved. Sinning isn't good. And I'm not saying, it's okay to sin.
Right.
But from a point of view of, me being in my early Christian walk, I'm such a bad Christian. And you hear it all the time from either people say you're a bad Christian, you call yourself a Christian, or even sometimes you wake up and you go, I'm supposed to be a Christian and I've just whatever. I'm a Christian, but actually I'm a believer. You can't take that away from me. You can't, no one can take that away from me.
Right.
I can make a lot of mistakes. That doesn't change. Those mistakes don't change me from believing.
Yes.
And that was a massive moment for me. So that was like, like when you just go, wow, how have I not thought about it that way over the last...
Absolutely. And a similar one for me was the thought of like, most people think about the faith journey as a transaction. So there was a moment where there was a transaction. Like you go to the shop and you give them some money and you get the product. And you think about that with the cross of like, Jesus does this, you are forgiven, that's it. Rather than it being a transaction, it's a transformation. It's a whole new birth. So if you're born again, you're a new creation. You can no longer be defined by anything other than how God has defined you.
Wow.
That's crazy. Like if you start thinking about that, of like, there hasn't been a transaction, there's been an absolute transformation. I'm not, the old person is dead. Paul says that. Dead and now reborn. So whatever you did today, whatever behavior, that doesn't define what's happened. You've been transformed. Now it's about your behavior coming into a line with your identity.
How did you get to that point of going, there is definitely something in this? How did you make that decision?
I think like growing up where I did and seeing, like I know people listening to this and yourself included, you when you've seen brokenness and you've seen devastation from a young age, there's something in you that says there has to be a response to it, like bigger than even like the hands and feet of someone who's trying to do the work to help. Like life can't be just this bad. So I felt like I had this hunger in me from a very young age of like, what's the response to human suffering? Like, what is it? What is hope? Like, stories of hope, like, how do you actually remain someone that's hopeful when life can be as atrocious as this? Like looking at a widow who's lost her husband. She's got 4 kids. Every one of her children from 2 years old are out on the street begging with her. And they come home and all they have to live on that day is what they've earned. And then they start, lives that are like that. There's got to be something. So from a young age, that's in me. And it never turned off. Like, even if I like disconnected with church or whatever, it never turned off the curiosity of like, what's the solution to this? And so I think when I saw that pamphlet, it spoke to that brokenness in me and that wound in me. There's a longing in me to know that ultimately we haven't been left alone in a cold, indifferent, cruel universe. Do you know God is Father? Could it be that there's a Father? Whether you've had a good father or not, we've all had a father experience. So even if your father wasn't around, that was your father experience. It was an absence of a father. And nearly every great story, every film you've ever seen, the crux of the hero storyline is based around the wound of a father. Luke Skywalker. The whole narrative of Star Wars is around the father wound. So when Jesus comes, what's he talking about? The father wound. The whole point, he says, I'm the way to the Father. And so when I saw the leaflet, I was like, every bit of brokenness in our world, on every level, has to do with this orphan nature in humanity. Like, and you know it, and I know it, a sense where you wake up, Tuesday morning, you wake up and there's a sense of, I'm alone. I'm alone. Like at the crux of my being, I'm alone. So the answer to that question isn't like societal change. It isn't even the missionaries working with the poor. It's an existential, like spiritual awakening that says, you're not alone, even when you are at the most evidential loneliness. Like when someone else could say, objectively, you are alone, still not alone. And so I went all in on that pursuit. And I realized, like Simba, and I know everybody's seen Lion King, right? Simba's walking through the wilderness and he's alone and he's lost and he's devastated. And he meets Rafiki. And Rafiki comes up to him, the monkey, and he goes, I know who you are. And he goes, no, you don't know who I am. And Rafiki goes, you're Mufasa's boy. And Simba like stops and he looks around and he goes, you knew my father? And Rafiki goes, correction, I know your father. So Simba goes, you must not know that my father's dead. And then Rafiki goes, wrong again. Your father's alive. He lives in you, right? It's a children's story, but it's the gospel. Who are you? You're Mufasa's boy. Mufasa means king. And we live our lives, we grow up, we do what we do, whether good or bad. We try and find our way in the world. We become successful. We become like devastating towards other people. Like whatever we end up doing, we're longing for someone to come up to us and say, I know who you are. You're Mufasa's boy. Who you are is defined by whose you are. That's it.
Why Jesus and why not Buddha or Muhammad?
There's a line in the book, The Shack, and Jesus is talking about the love of God. And Max says, Jesus, are you saying that all roads lead to you? And Jesus says, nah, he says, most roads lead nowhere, but I travel down every road to find you, you know? And my view is this, you know, Christ is in all things. And every like truth is God's truth. If it's good and it's beautiful and it's pure and it's redemptive, it's of God. There is no other God. There is only Christ, you know? And so when you say like, why Jesus? I'm like, there's no other option. In Narnia, you can tell I'm on the kids' books now, but in Narnia, at the end of it, there's a soldier who's been fighting against Aslan and against Narnia, right? So he's been fighting for, I think it's Taj, and he dies in battle, fighting against Aslan. He wakes up after death, and who's standing in front of him? Aslan. And he's like, no, I fought it against you. And Aslan says, there was no one else, you know? And what C.S. Lewis is doing in that is he's saying, look, there's a longing in your heart. There's a desire in your heart for God. Like however it comes out, whether it's drugs, like you go to drugs for a million different reasons, but one of them is because you want to escape. You want to transcend. You want something transcendent. You want something that lifts you beyond this moment and this experience. Yeah, because you were made for eternity. You were made to commune with God and experience God, you know? And so the one thing that is true of every human being that has ever lived is suffering. Jesus says, in this life, you will have troubles. And those troubles are going to make you need something that exists beyond the world itself. So like, I think for me, it started at 18, that hunger and that longing, and I haven't stopped looking for it. And I don't know a better story, bro. Like, there is no better story than this one. The idea that God leaves his state of like separation and otherness, perceived otherness, and joins humanity. So I told you at the beginning, my quest of like, what's the answer to human suffering? Do you want to know it? God suffers with us. The answer isn't an academic, intellectual idea that makes you go, bro, you've been through, I'm talking to you right now. You've been through
Me?
it. Yeah. I'm not asking you to go into it, but you've been through it. And I know people listen, you've been through it. There's nothing I could say intellectually that's going to make you go, yeah, that's it. I understand now. It makes sense. Nothing. It's offensive to what you've been through. No. All I can offer you is companionship. All I can say is the whole time you suffered, the whole time you walked through a valley, you weren't alone. And there is no other story. Bro, I've studied philosophy, Eastern religion. Like, there is no other story where God accompanies humanity. God climbs down from his throne onto the cross. Why the cross? The cross was just the most torturous image that could be imagined. So think of whatever that is now, and that's what Christ climbs upon and becomes with us. So it's basically say when Christ is on the cross, Christ finds himself in the midst of every single expression of human suffering. That's the good news. That's our response. So the person that I saw begging on the street in Pakistan, the man that I saw outside of Greg's today who I was able to, share a sausage roll with, whatever your suffering is, Christ suffers with you. That's it.
What they say of me, I made it. I ain't here to get famous. I ain't here for the playlist. I just pray they play this in years to come. Like my grandson in the basement playing my tape for his mate, saying my grandfather made this. Speaking like a prophet. Call me the Baptist, a poet standing in tatters as I speak to the masses. We're going backwards, divided like fractions, miming like actors, despite the mass and distractions. We stood that child under the mattress, holding the world like we're Atlas, shoulders swollen and haggard, trying to find our soul in the damage and some hope in the blackness. I wish I was a better son, a better husband, a better brother. I hide behind the covers, hold my breath like I'm smothered. I say nothing, I'm stubborn, trying to hold it together and make a meal from the record, smelling like Tuscan leather. I'ma do this forever like I believe that it helps, cause you can't give away your heart without bleeding yourself. Man, I ain't nothing to aspire to. I broke every commandment by Tuesday, and I lied too. It was the day before, and we all this on the floor. Naked as the day we're born, waking up to face the war. This was for you fighting with your back against the rope. This was for you lighting up the room without a hope. This was for you dancing through the fire and the smoke, bringing beauty to the struggle like a rose. And this was for you choosing that your story isn't done. This was for you standing after you've been overcome. This was for you waiting for the rising of the sun. Dawn is coming for every defiant one. Life used to look so beautiful, then you lose someone you love, and it starts to look unusual. Picasso paintings with abstract faces, I'm trying to place it. Give me the courage to face the pain and pick flowers in a wasteland. If you're on the other end of this, I pray that you remember this hope is real. You remember it, I swear you got the strength for it. Man, that's all our friendship is. Walking through this hell on earth, bringing heaven where the devil lives. Yeah, we're on the wrong side of the tracks, man, I know that. Taking pictures of our pain with a Kodak. I look closer at the image and I see that you ain't finished. You were dancing through the struggle, thanking God for all you given. Now I thank you for this living. You showed us that these prisons are made of what we give them. We ain't bound to no one's system, we are free. Ain't that something to believe, we are free. This was for you fighting with your back against the rope. This was for you lighting up the room without a hope. This was for you dancing through the fire and the smoke, bringing beauty to the struggle like a rose. And this was for you choosing that your story isn't done. This was for you standing after you've been overcome. This was for you waiting for the rising of the sun. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I stare at the ceiling, I'm scared of my feelings. Here's my bed sheet, hear myself breathing. Need now peace, I start believing. Searching for meaning and seeking, I ate and I wishing, so I'm waiting. Vision was vacant, mystery missing, the bones me breaking. All I'm saying is I got no patience for murderous rumors and those who hate. I write for freedom, but you sad piece, you're broken and beat. Nothing to say, pages preaching, that's just reaching you to the feet. Even the evening when demons are speaking, life's too heavy, you think about leaving, you won't believe it, man, here I'm speaking. This was for you fighting with your back against the rope. This was for you lighting up the room without hope. This was for you dancing through the fire and the smoke, bringing beauty to the struggle like a rose. This was for you choosing that your story isn't done. This was for you standing after you've been overcome. This was for you waiting for the rising of the sun. Dawn is coming for every defiant one. Yeah. This song is dedicated to every single person rising.
You are quite a gifted, talented individual.
If someone asks me what do you do, I just say I'm a poet. That's the word that connects me most with what I do. Like, I use words to try and untangle the human experience and make sense of it, and hopefully offer people a little bit of peace and solace as I do it. I write for myself. I write myself out of ruts. That's what I do, and then I offer it to other people as soon as it helps.
By the way, I can't write poetry. I tried at school, and I always thought that poetry had to rhyme. Mm-hmm. And then I go, it doesn't rhyme. How's that poetry? It's just sentences together. But what I think is amazing is that you have used your gifting and your talents to then go into prisons.
I've met some of the best poets I've ever heard in prison. Like, I've been blown away, man.
How did you find your creativity in that?
I mean, like, my creativity, I wrote a poem at 9 years old because they asked us to at school. And I realized, I enjoy doing this. And then I found hip hop, and hip hop changed my life, man. Like, because it was storytelling. And I realized that's all I really want to do is tell stories and make sense of my story. And so the only thing I've ever, in our time together, I disagree with is you saying I can't write poetry. We've been given limited ideas of what poetry is, but poetry is a relief valve for the human experience.
Okay.
So if you were to wake up tomorrow morning and just put pen to page and say, before you get the kids up, before you do whatever you're going to do, I'm going to set up a timer, do 2 minutes and just write and let it flow, whatever it is, bro. It could be the most obvious thing you could ever say. Like, bro, that's your first poem. Like, and the craft comes later. But a poem is a relief valve. It's like okay, something's been released. So I've been doing that for as long as I can remember. The stages started getting a bit bigger. People started listening, connecting to what I was doing. And then I started going into prisons just to I'd go in on a Sunday morning with a church team, and in this church service, I'd do a poem. And then I was on tour and I was like, yo, let me play a show in a prison when I'm on tour. And I'd do that. And then I started doing workshops. And I've loved doing workshops because, so the prayers in the Bible called the Psalms, right? And David wrote a lot of the Psalms. And, we love David, but David was a criminal. David should have written most of his poems from behind bars. He should have been serving multiple life sentences. But he was a king and he didn't, and it was a different time. I say all of that to say, thousands of years later, we're still reading David's poems and we're finding solace and peace and refuge in his words.
Wow.
And I think the same is true now, that there's men and women that are doing sentences right now that are writing the poems that I need to hear. So I go into prisons and I do workshops and I'm finding the poetry that is blessing my soul. I'm the one going in and receiving. I just get to help people get unstuck and unlocked by realizing that they are poets. And I got a lot of dreams, man. I want to publish poems that are written from, behind bars. And the main thing for me is seeing people in their cell writing poems and it helping them make sense of what they've been through, make sense of what they've done, make sense of how to move life forward in whatever way they can. Whether they're ever coming out or not, to live with a peace and live with a sense of freedom and a sense of closure and forgiveness and grace, and I think poetry is a big part of doing that.
You could choose to use your gifts absolutely anywhere. You could make probably a lot of money doing what you do in the secular business. Why would you want to surround yourself with people who have committed some of the most horrific crimes in our society?
This is my honest answer. Because I love them. I really enjoy it. I don't feel like I'm going as some noble guy. I don't feel like I'm doing a good work. I just feel like I'm going in because that's where I want to be. I find it incredibly inspiring. I enjoy being able to offer a tool that helps people. But it's always a special transcendent experience for me going in. Last time I was in a prison, there was a guy who said to me, in response to some of the things we were talking about, he was like, you know what? I'm choosing to view myself as a monk in a monastery, in a cell. Because the monks, they would call their space their cell. So he was like, I'm no longer viewing myself as an inmate in a prison. I'm going to view myself as a monk in a monastery in a cell and use the time that I have now for spiritual transformation. So whether you're like a billionaire in a 10-room mansion or you're a monk in a cell, you're still carrying a soul that needs transforming. And
some people aren't even aware of that other.
Yeah, and so everything we're talking about right now, finding out who you are and whose you are, writing poems that give you a release, this is all transformation of the soul. Learning to pray for the first time, it's all transformation of the soul. And whether you spend your rest of your life in a cell or you come out, that is going to impact the world that you inhabit. It's the most simple thing. To begin to pray, a transformed world begins with us, and a transformed us begins when we pray. Prayer is God is a carpenter working on us, and prayer is the tool in which the carpenter can work. So if you stop praying, you're basically saying, I don't want any more work done. I'm good. I'm like, bro, I'm not good. I'm not ready to be done. I need transforming. I want to be able to forgive someone. I want to be able to be forgiven. I want to live fully present. I don't want to judge. I don't want to speak with hatred. I want to carry peace. So I need to pray. And prayer just begins with, God, I'm here. I'm showing up. Whether I'm in a cell or I'm in a mansion, I'm here and you're here too. That's how simple it is.
What a way to finish the episode. And in fact, to actually close series 1 of Stories of Hope. I have no idea whether there'll be a series 2. But my prayer, and everyone here at UCB and at Junction 42, our prayer for you is that actually Jesus has done something whilst you've been listening to these stories. These are more than just stories. These are people, real people, me included. If you listen to episode 0, then I found myself in circumstances that I did not ask to be in. And the people that you've listened to over the last 8 episodes, they're also in that too. So my prayer for you is that regardless whether you know Jesus or not, know he is interested and he wants to know you, and you are never too far down the line for Jesus. Maybe you made a commitment, but maybe you wandered away. Maybe you just thought, this isn't for me. Or maybe you kind of, fell for the lie of, oh, you're not a very good Christian, or how can I be a Christian when I do this? I'm going to ask Joshua to pray a prayer in a second, and I would love for you to pray with us. And maybe there's a second type of person, and maybe that might be you. Maybe you are in that dark place at the moment. Maybe you are in a place where you think, how did my life get to this? Let me tell you that Jesus loves you and he is waiting for you to talk to him. So if that's you, then I would love for you to pray this prayer. And then once you've done that, I'd like you to promise me that you do something. If you've got a phone, a smartphone, like an iPhone, then download a free app called Bible. It's got a brown cover and it'll have everything in there that you need. And start reading the Bible. John is a great place. The book of John, which is in the New Testament, it comes after Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, is a great place to start learning more about Jesus and a great place to start reading the Bible. If you struggle with reading or concentrating, there's an amplified Bible. Just search for AMP, or NIV, which is the New International Version. They're the Bibles that I have on my phone. Thirdly, go and find a church. And if you need any of those 3 things, a Bible, or basically to find a church, or you need more prayer, then we have a prayer line here at UCB, and we would love to hear from you. Just head onto our website, ucb.co.uk, and we will pray for you, and we will help you. Joshua.
Yeah, well, I'll say it slowly so that if you want to say it after me, as wherever you're hearing it, you can. And I'm going to begin with the word Father, and it might feel very strange to pray Father and say Father when you're referring to God. The reason I use that word is because that's what Jesus said when he prayed. And what I realize is when I call God Father, before I say anything else, I'm actually acknowledging the deepest wound and the deepest need for healing and freedom in my life. Father, to acknowledge that. You're a Father. You're a Father who loves you, who cares for you, who wants to nurture you, who wants to keep you safe, who wants to protect you. So we'll begin with this. Father, I am here, and I acknowledge that you are here too. You invite me to be here as I am, and not as I or anyone else says I should be. I want to acknowledge your presence in my life. And I want to acknowledge that I'm not what I've done. I want to acknowledge that I'm your child. And so today I choose to receive it. That I am your child. I choose to receive your grace. And I choose in this moment to open myself up to your love, to your presence, and to your peace. Will you meet me where I am, as I am, because I need you. Amen. The void. The untamable, unreachable, unexplainable void. And I would tell you that it's nothing. But to define it as that which is not, I would first have to conceive of everything as if I hold within my mind a pale blue dot in all of its complexity ever-changing, like landscapes through generations. And I've built cities in the wilderness.
They pollute the skies above them but distract from the barren wastelands beneath them, and sometimes that's enough. When the darkness of the evening settles on my skin and my thoughts within, though silent, still sound like howling winds, oh, just to be lost again. This earth that seems so wide is but the shore that breaks a cosmic tide, where in 1 second a beam of light travels 186,000 miles, but it fails to reach me. Or can it find the space within my soul, the black hole made of infinity? I've been so desperate to know myself within the terror of my own mystery. If we are beings made from the stars, then we are the cosmos incarnated. We are nothing becoming something. We are the void with skin and faces. Oh, I'm terrified with amazement. Astronomy has become the practice of my theology. I have studied what is vast and what is intricate. I found no man looks to the stars to grasp them in his hand, but to face space and find his place in the wisdom of the infinite. So bring me the heretics and pagans. I read the holy book from Genesis to Revelation and found God through Carl Sagan. It's as if the more we try to explain him, the more we tame him. I have as much interest in a God that fits in boxes and upon pages as I do lions inside of cages. Let what is wild remain wild. You can't colonize the divine, nor can you confine your own existence in space and time. We are looking up at stars that died, and yet their light still shines through night skies. Ain't it the same with our own lives? We are here in the sense of our essence, but our absence is as real as our presence, and space isn't filled with nothing but the past lingering in the present. Oh, face the darkness. Stare into the black hole of your own soul and tell me what you see. Tell me there isn't color of more beauty than you've ever seen. When I surrendered to the void, the blackness of my shame and grief, I found out what I feared the most had the power to make me free. When I surrendered to the void, the blackness of my shame and grief, I found that what I feared the most had the power to make me free.
This has been a UCB podcast in partnership with Junction 42. Find out more about Junction 42 at their website, junction42.org.